June 24, 1812, Napoleon marches with the largest army Europe has ever seen into the heart of his former ally. Victory seems within reach, but the Russians stand resolute, retreating into the unforgiving winter. As the temperature plummets and supplies run low, what began as a grand conquest turns into a nightmare. Brace yourself for one of the most dramatic invasions in European history. In 1807, following his victory at Friedland, Napoleon and Tsar Alexander I of Russia signed the Treaty of Tilsit, solidifying a temporary alliance. However, relations deteriorated over the next few years due to multiple factors. Napoleon's establishment of the Duchy of Warsaw was seen as a threat to Russian interests. By 1810, Alexander withdrew from the continental system, which was damaging Russia's economy. This move led to illicit trade with the British, infuriating Napoleon. The growing mistrust culminated in April 1812, when Alexander issued an ultimatum demanding the withdrawal of French troops from his territories. But Napoleon refused, and he mobilized a Grande Armée for an invasion. But before the invasion began, Russia secured diplomatic wins that bolstered its defense. In 1812, King of Sweden, former French Marshal Bernadotte, agreed to remain neutral, who became hostile to Napoleon after France seized Swedish Pomerania. Simultaneously, Russia signed a peace treaty with the Ottoman Empire after long war. These two agreements secured Russia's northern and southern borders, freeing up troops to fight against Napoleon's Grande Armée. Napoleon assembled the largest army Europe had ever seen, of around 600,000 troops from across the continent, but most of them were foreign troops, from different allies. The Duchy of Warsaw, Saxony, Bavaria, Westphalia, and Italy, and even recent enemies like Prussia and Austria. Napoleon's invasion force was divided into three main armies: the first army led by Napoleon himself, the second led by his adopted son, Eugene, Viceroy of Italy, and the third by his brother Jerome, King of Westphalia. On the left, Marshal MacDonald with the Prussian 10th Corps guarded the northern flank, while General Schwarzenberg's Austrian Corps was in the right. Napoleon's cavalry, under Marshal Murat, served as the vanguard. Devout led the 1st Corps and Oudinot led the 2nd Corps. There were also 100,000 troops were in reserve. The Russian army was strategically positioned in three armies: Barclay de Tolly's 1st Army in the north, Bagration's 2nd Army to the south, and Tourmassar's 3rd Reserve Army in the southwest. The Russian army was around 250,000 troops. They were greatly outnumbered. On the 24th of June 1812, Grande Armée began crossing the Niemen River into Russia. Napoleon advanced north to Vilnius. His initial strategy was to defeat the Russian forces by separating them. Napoleon aimed to strike and defeat General Barclay de Tolly's army. Meanwhile, Jerome Bonaparte was ordered to hold Prince Bagration's army in place, with the ultimate goal of trapping both Russian forces. However, Barclay, a cautious commander, chose to retreat and burn villages and crops. Bagration, a more aggressive leader, refused to retreat. Only an order from the Tsar forced Bagration to retreat. After Napoleon reached Vilnius, but Barclay already retreated. Meanwhile, Jerome failed to hold Bagration, so Napoleon sent Marshal Davout, the 1st Corps, to trap Bagration, but he escaped the trap. Jerome struggled in his command, frustrated by supply issues and criticized by Napoleon, and failed to hold back Bagration's army. Ultimately, Napoleon reassigned Jerome's troops to Marshal Davout, leading a humiliated Jerome to abandon his post and return to his kingdom. The Russian scorched turf strategy left the French army struggling to live off the land, and soldiers, unaccustomed to long marches, began to desert or collapse from exhaustion. the army had to make frequent stops, which slowed Napoleon's advance. After a brief rest at Vilnius, Napoleon resumed his advance. But Barclay continued his retreat to Vitebsk, hoping to unite with Bagration. But Davout blocked his path. At Vitebsk, Napoleon clashed with Barclay's rearguard, but the Russians escaped, burning supplies as they retreated. Meanwhile, the Russian Third Reserve Army had defeated the Saxon Seventh Corps at the Battle of Corbrin, forcing Napoleon to send reinforcements. By the end of July, Napoleon's army has suffered heavily from exhaustion and disease, which reduced his army to 200,000 men. Cossacks harassed French supply lines, forcing Napoleon to send troops for defense. After staying several days at Vitebsk, Napoleon received news of victories by Schwarzenberg and Bavarian forces, securing his flanks for the moment.